Well, um, one of the things that I know a lot of us were looking forward to is, you know, having an opportunity to get to the polls and vote, and looking at the way this administration's approval ratings have gone. Um, Midterms felt like maybe a bit of respite lay on the horizon, you know, just over the hills there. But as it turns out, black voter protections are in peril if the Voting Rights Act is overturned. And to be fair, there's nobody who is credible that I've come across who thinks that the Voting Rights Act has a chance of surviving this Supreme Court. So, yeah. Um, let's just get into it. This from BINnews.com. The last major safeguard for black voters under the Voting Rights Act may soon be eliminated, per The Guardian. This week, the Supreme Court has signaled that it may strike down Section 2, the provision of the VRA that prohibits racially discriminatory voting practices, including gerrymandering, that dilutes black political power. The court heard oral arguments in Louisiana versus Calais on Wednesday, October 15, during which conservative justices appeared poised to rule in favor of the lawsuit brought by a group of non-African American voters. The lawsuit argues that redrawing Louisiana's congressional maps to give black voters a second majority district, as ordered by lower courts under the VRA, violates the plaintiff's rights under the 14th and 15th Amendments. A ruling in favor of the lawsuit would effectively end federal protections against racial gerrymandering. Section 2 is the last major safeguard for black voters after the nation's highest court gutted Section 5 of the VRA in 2013 in Shelby County versus Holder, which had required states with histories of voter suppression to get federal approval before changing voting laws. Quote, "The remedies are so tied up with race because race is the initial problem," unquote, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said Wednesday as she pushed back against the court's conservative majority. Louisiana versus Calais centers around the state's redistricting after the 2020 census. Although black residents make up 1/3 of Louisiana's population, lawmakers drew only one majority black congressional district. Federal courts ordered the state to create a second, but the new challenge aims to overturn that order, claiming it discriminates against white voters. Conservative justices argued that partisan motives, not race, justified the map. I'm going to read that again. Conservative justices argued that partisan motives, not race, justified the map. Their argument mirrors the 2013 ruling in Shelby County versus Holder, where Chief Justice John Roberts claimed racial discrimination in voting had diminished. Experts warned that a ruling against Section 2 would make it virtually impossible to challenge racial gerrymandering, stripping black voters of meaningful legal recourse. Quote, "The Voting Rights Act enforces the 15th Amendment. It doesn't violate it," unquote. Janai Nelson, president of the AACP Legal Defense Fund, said in a statement. A decision is expected by June 2026, just months before the midterms, during which Republicans could gain as many as 19 House seats through racially skewed maps that may no longer be subject to legal challenge. So, yeah, that's tough. But I want to offer something. Now, I don't know how true this is. You know, it's my way to tell you if I haven't done the research myself, but I tend to align myself and follow reputable sources. Don't always get it right. But I'm going to share something with you that it keeps me in this fight. As I mentioned, you know, I just don't have no quit in my heart. I'm just not that person. I should have been like a big like boxer or something like that, because I have like a heart like that, you know, like Mighty Mouse, man. But every so often you get some encouragement and it kind of increases the size of the fight in the dog. This obviously will knock some wind out of your sails, but the one thing that I'm holding on to now is that a lot of the gerrymandering historically has taken place in the South, and it has been to the detriment of black voters. As mentioned, in Louisiana, a third of the population is black. They only have one district where they have a majority black representation. Black people could be described as a political group because, for the most part, I mean that intentionally, for the most part, as in more than 51% or more than 50%, black voters are aligned for the most part. Okay. Black voters have spoken time and again that a more progressive society, a more inclusive society reflects the reality in which they want to live. And this last election, I think, bears that out in the data as well, with black men voting, I think, 83%, and black women voting 92% for the Democratic nominee, the Progressive Party, the candidate that reflects their values more accurately, more closely, and espouses the future in which black people find themselves in a more equitable society. The thing about these states in the South, though, is that they historically have discriminated against black people. So they've already done the gerrymandering. They've done it over and over and over again, and they've gerrymandered about as much as they can. Now, that's not to say they can't do any more. Clearly, there's 19 more seats potentially available to them. But the good news is that the blue states historically have not done this. So there's plenty of room in blue states to offset this. And the Supreme Court decision applies to all states. And since they said you can do this for partisan reasons, not racial reasons, meaning you can divide up the racial makeup of the group if it serves the interest of your party, that blows the door open, wide open for blue states to do the same thing. And that's where you have a lot of population centers. You have a lot of population, indeed. Now, I don't want to be obtuse. I recognize that the purple states all went for Trump last election. They have governments in place that reflect the majority in this country, or at least the majority in the House and the Senate. I'm not sure what numbers will bear out ultimately, but all hope is not lost. If enough people get mad, then the voting rights protections, that's just another hurdle to overcome. It's not impossible. It just is more challenging. It's just more work. But, if you're like me and your heart don't beat fast and you ain't scared and you down to get busy, what's a little bit more hard work, right? Q, anything?
What I've learned in my time as an adult, and more in the last 10 years than any other point in my life, is that there is a reluctance by the Democratic Party to play by the rules that the Republicans play by. So I would not get too excited at the idea of Democrats doing their own version of gerrymandering to work in their own favor, because they're too stuck in political norms. And so are the citizens, all of the citizens. You and I have interviewed and looked at the data where people most harmed and affected by police violence still think that we should give more money to police because it makes their neighborhoods safer, because that's what they've been told and that's what they think, because that's the norm. They're more comfortable with the other side being racist than being anti-racist themselves, because that's the norm. There is a reluctancy for everyone to hypercorrect the other way. Even as the other side hypercorrects into aggressive, outward, overt racism, there was a reluctance for all people and government officials to be anti the other direction. There is a reluctance, holding on to political norms and politeness and respectability in order to appear better than the other side. So even when the other side says we stole the election, we won't say they stole the election, because we don't like playing by their rules. I'll say that again. Even when they say, yeah, we rigged it and we wouldn't have won if we didn't rig it, we still don't say, hey, they rigged it, because we are stuck to these norms. So, it's hard for me to get hopeful around things like this, but I guess we'll see.